Good morning. අද මං අරන් එන්නෙත් English book එකක්මයි. මේක මං කියුවේ last week. So this is Elif Shafak's 10 minutes and 38 seconds in this strange world. This is one of the best books that I've ever read in my life. And this is the very first of Elif Shafak's that I read. මේ පොත මම කියවන්න මගේ ලිස්ට් එකේ දාගෙන හිටියා. මගේ TB එකත් තිබිලා මාස ගානකට පස්සේ තමයි මම I thought of taking it up. And the very first instant that I read the very first line of the book, I fell in love with it. එතකොට මේක publish උනේ 2019 වල, but I'm too late to read it. I felt I should have read it like 5 years ago when it was published. මේක ගොඩක් අය මේ වෙනකොට කියවලා ඉවරයි. The genre විදිහට මම මේකේ ගන්නේ, this is more like a historical fiction and contemporary fiction as well. ඒ දෙපැත්තටම යනවා. And at the same time අපිට මේකේ හම්බෙනවා points of view, author's point of view. يعني කියන්නේ author is omnipresent. We see the characters through the eyes of the author. Make a protagonist, female කෙනෙක්, and she's a sex worker. Her name is Tequila Leila. ඒක නෙමෙයි ඇත්ත නම Leila, but Tequila Leila is her name that she uses in her trade, in her industry. ඊළඟට මේක හරිම strong write up එකක්. මේක කියවිය යුතුමයි. I highly recommend this. You should be reading this. එතකොට මේකේ setting එක ගත්තාම this is set in van and in Istanbul. මම මුලින්ම කියන්න ඕනේ Elif Shafak is one of British Turkish writer. She's a most of her books I think are based in Istanbul. The setting of her books. ඒ වගේම මට තව දැනුණ දෙයක් තමයි, දන්නේ නැතුව පොත මේ අතට ගත්තේ කියවන්න හරියටම ස්ටාර්ට් කරන්නේ මේක මේ හොඳ කාලයක් කියවන්න. මොකද පොත මේ ස්ටෝරි එක පටන් ගන්නෙත් මේ කාලේ. කියන්නේ ඔක්තෝබර් නොවැම්බර් කාලෙදී තමයි පටන් ගන්නෙ. But in 1990 වල 1990 වල තමයි ස්ටෝරි එක පටන් අරන් තියෙන්නේ පොතේ. නමුත් we are given a flashback into the protagonist's life. එතකොට 1990 වෙනකොට යාට වයස සාමාන්‍යයෙන් she is around 40 plus. එතකොට යාගේ life story එකේ 1990 කියන්නේ end එක. එතකොට ලයිෆ් එකේ එන්ඩ් එකෙන් තමයි අපි ස්ටෝරි එක ස්ටාර්ට් කරන්නේ. හරි, මේකේ ඔඩියන්ස් එක විදිහට මම දෙන්නේ target readers would be this is for the adults, not for youngsters. I would say young adult. විශේෂයෙන්ම I would recommend this for people who are studying literature. This is a very good read. You must read this if you are into like in-depth studies of feminism. හොඳ study එකක් වෙයි. කියවලා නැත්නම් අනිවාර්යෙන් කියවන්න ඕනේ. Even if you are not interested in feminism, you should be reading this as a literature student. ඒ වගේම මම warning එකක් දෙන්න ඕනේ, මේක කියවන්න එපා කවුද කියලත්. කියන්නේ age wise නෙවෙයි, mentality wise I should give this warning. And this is don't read if you are feeling down. මේ වෙලාවේ ඉන්න mentality එක එච්චරම හොඳ නැත්තම් කියවන්න එපා. If you are depressed and if you are tired psychologically and physically tired, exhausted, don't read it. And at the same time, if you have any history of sexual abuse, don't. Especially if you got sexually abused when you were a child, don't read it. And if you are still going through the trauma, don't. And at the same time, if you're hypersensitive to death, don't. And at the same time, if you are suffering from any kind of disease at the moment, මොකද ගොඩක් අය මේ අර ගොඩක් terminal illnesses තියෙන කට්ටිය සමහරලාට if you are bedridden you tend to read. Those who are readers, they tend to read, but at the same time I would say this is not a very good read. If you are bedridden and if you are suffering from something, don't. It might affect you negatively, so don't. Read this if you are mentally sound. And physically sound echarama avasya naha, but if you're mentally sound, read. Yes, and you should be reading. If you're not reading, and in the sense if you're a reader and not reading this, I mean you're missing out a lot, right? Ilangata, there was this one place in this book which captured my heart at the very beginning somewhere. Tequila, Leila, let's say Leila ගෙන් ගොඩක් අය අහනවා why, like when she's grown up, a lot of people who come to her, especially her clients, they ask her why she writes her name with I in the middle instead of Y. Like in her language it should be her mother tongue, it should be Leyla. That's how her father named her, but she uses it as Leila. එතකොට ලෙලා කියනවා Y stands for yesterday and I stands for infinity කියලා. ඒ page එක ඔයගලන්ට හම්බ වෙයි by the very beginning of the first 10 or 15 pages of the book. You will find it, and it's very important for you to know that, like to highlight it. I have highlighted it. And at the same time, if we go back to the title of the book, it says 10 minutes 38 seconds in this strange world. එතකොට මේ story එකේ භාගයක්ම, like half of the story happens within 10 minutes and 38 seconds, and the book is structured in a way that we are going from 1 minute to the next, right? එතකොට ඒකේ තියෙන significance එක තමයි like according to scientific experiments done on the brain, like human brain shuts down completely shuts down. Like you die, but it shuts down after 10 minutes and 38 seconds exactly, and that's the premise of the book, right? So ඒ මත බේස්ලා තමයි පොත, that's how the story is won. And half of the book goes like that, and the rest of it goes after that, right? මම බොහොම අමාරුවෙන් තමයි ඔයගලන්ට ස්පොයිලර්ස් දෙන්න නැතුව කතාව කියන්න නැතුව, කියලා නැති අයට කතාව කියන්න නැතුව හෝල්ඩ් බෑක් කරගෙන මම මේ කියන්නේ. The book is structured in like into two parts, like it has two parts. The first part goes within 10 minutes and 38 seconds, and the rest of it until the next dawn, right? එතකොට තව දෙයක් තමයි, I learned a lot about history of Istanbul and Turkey through the story, an area which is not very familiar to me. I learned a lot, especially I miss this audience wise. මං හිතන්නේ මේක ගොඩක්ම කියවන්න ඕනේ those who are studying literature, and especially if you are a Muslim, you should be reading this. This is a very good read for you, especially girls, especially the females. And then මට එහෙමම මේවා කරන්න බෑ. නමුත් even men, I think men, oh yes, men, you should be reading this. This is a very good read for you, especially if you are a reader. You need to be reading this. And then Cemetery of Companionless, මම දැනගෙන හිටියේ නෑ එහෙම එකක් මේ ලෝකේ තියෙනවා කියලා. Companionless, like මම මේ පොතෙන් තමයි දැනගත්තේ ඇත්තටම එහෙම එකක් තියෙනවා කියලා. Where there are people who are companionless. They have nobody in the world, no friends even, and they are buried in this particular area of Istanbul. හොයලා බලන්න. ඒ වගේම අපිට ස්ටෝරි එක පටන් ගන්න පොතේ මුලම තියෙනවා මැප් එකක්. I love maps so that I can go like walk in the streets while reading. And at the same time you will meet this particular character at the very end, like in the second half of the book, Kamil Effendi. He works at the hospital, especially at the morgue. He works at the morgue. මං හිතන්නේ එයාව වැඩි highlight කරලා නැති වුණාට he plays a major role in the book, right? ඒ වගේම තව දෙයක් තමයි අපි හිතුවට even if Layla is the protagonist, it's not just her story that we get to know the story of people, like many people who are close to her in her life, who have been close, and those who are the closest to her in her life. ඊළඟට yeah, oh mama පොතේ තියෙන themes වලට යන්න කලින් I'll read one part of the book. This is very important, and this comes in the second half of the book, where there's this doctor at the morgue, and this part is very interesting, right? This appears on page 184 as I remember, right? So I'll read that part. Yeah. He had worked with cadaver for so long, preferring their silent company to the endless chatter of the living. Yet, the more bodies he inspected, the more intrigued he was by the process of death. When exactly did a living being turn into a corpse? The cessation of life generated a series of changes, both material and immaterial. ඊට පස්සේ තව ලයින් එකක් ගිහිල්ලා මේ ටික තමයි වැදගත්ම. Researchers at various world-renowned institutions had observed persistent brain activity in people who had just died. In some cases, this had lasted for only a few minutes. In others, for as much as 10 minutes and 38 seconds. What happened during that time? Did the dead remember the past, and if so, which parts of it, and in what order? How could the mind condense an entire lifetime into the time it took to boil a kettle? මේක බොහොම මේ second part එකේ මේ එන කොටස it's scientific, and at the same time it gives the premise of the book. ඒක බොහොම වැදගත් තැනක් කියලා මම හිතනවා. ඊළඟට මේකේ එන themes අපි ගත්තොත් this has a lot about sex workers' life, no matter which corner of the world, like how it's like and how it starts, how it ends, how a sex worker is created in this society, right? And like what are the reasons for a female to become a sex worker? Not just a female, right now we have males too who are in the industry. And then traditions and breaking traditional codes, that's another theme. And emancipation of women and individuals, one of the themes in the book that has a lot of gravity in this. And then child sexual abuse, overpopulation, religious codes that shackle people down, transgender community, and especially friendship. If you're a person who cherishes your friends and your friendships, your relationships with your friends, you should be reading this. And then ඔය themes තමයි විශේෂයෙන්ම අපි දකින්නේ, and this is more like a family saga as well to a certain extent, the first part of the book, right? And literary devices අපි ගත්තොත් මේකේ ගොඩක්ම තියෙන්නේ visual imagery, and this is like one big canvas painted in words by Shafak. I basically fell in love with her writing, and I made a promise to myself that I'm gonna read all her work, like every one of them. There's one of her books with me already. Before I read this, I got it as a gift from one of my students, Aseni. I should be reading that too. And then තව අපි literary devices ගත්තා. මට ගොඩක්ම මතක් වුණේ නාරයන්ගේ writing, හරිම descriptive, හරිම ලස්සනයි. and James Joyce as well. හරිම කියන්නේ ඒ descriptions අපිට තනිකර movie එකක් ගෙන. ඇත්තටම කිව්වොත් මේ පොත තනිකරම movie එකක්. This should be a movie. And at the same time I was reminded of two TV series and one movie. One is I'm sorry that they are from the Bollywood. One is Hiramandi, which was I think broadcast this year at the very beginning of this year. And then the other one is Gangubai Kathiawadi, historical movies, right? මට ඒ දෙක තමයි ගොඩක්ම මතක් වුණේ. හොඳ movies දෙකක්. ඒ දෙකට කැමති අය කවුරු හරි ඉන්නවා නම් මේ පොත අනිවාර්යෙන් කියවන්න. ඒ නැත්තත් මේක කියවන්න ඕනේ. And at the same time very descriptive, and this is narrative. There's a lot of flashback, and මම කියවනේ map එකක් තියෙනවා මුලින්ම. It takes you everywhere, like the writer takes you everywhere within Istanbul on a whole long journey, right? And the entire journey goes for around, it ends within 40, sorry, it ends within 24 hours time, right? ඊළඟට rhetorical questions ගොඩාක් තියෙනවා. And at the same time, like when you read, you become part of Leila's mind, and at the same time a part of Leila's life, right? And I would take this as one of the best social criticisms that I've ever read through a story. And මේකේ මට විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ 6th minute එකේ it created a bit of nostalgia as well. අර vinyl backgrounds දාලා ගොඩක් අය දන්නවා 1990s වල 1980s 70s 80s 90s වල කට්ටිය දන්නවා අපිට digital devices ඒ දවස්වල තිබ්බේ නැහැ. අපි ගොඩක් family photos එහෙම ගත්තේ studio එකකට ගිහිල්ලා අර vinyl background එක දාලා ඒ nostalgia එක create වෙනවා 6th minute එකට එනකොට. So basically I felt it's very painful. It breaks you to pieces, like tiny pieces. It breaks you to pieces. I cried while reading, like I cried a lot while reading. And at the same time I felt a bit at the very beginning. I'm a claustrophobic, so I felt claustrophobic at the very beginning of the story. And you will see, like when you read it, you will see why you feel claustrophobic, right? If you are claustrophobic, be very careful when you are reading. And then for a moment you feel like you pray for the protagonist. And in my case, I was actually thinking, like I was praying for her, thinking that she would run for her life. I was like, run Leila, run and find your life, right? Find your life and save yourself කියන එක මම pray කර කියෙව්වේ. But still I'm not going to tell you the story. You need to be reading this. And like I said, it's one of the best fiction that I've ever read in my life. I like to have writers like this in this era. That's one of the best things in my life as well. At the same time, like I said during my previous clip, I mentioned this, like you should be reading not just in one language, you should be reading in different languages, because when you when you read in just one language, you are to a certain extent you are limited. Your exposure is limited. The exposure to the world is limited. So when you read in different languages, it gives you different eyes, like different cultures. It provides you a lot of exposure to other cultures, other people in this world, right? එහින්දා අර seclude වෙන්න එපා, එකම language එකකින් කියවන්න එපා. Read in any language that you can read in, especially when it comes to different fiction, right? Especially historical fiction. මේ වගේ ඒවා කියවන්න ඕනේ. And so I recommend this to people who are interested in reading historical fiction, contemporary fiction, and those who love a really good social criticism through one of the stories that you might see in these days as well. This is not limited to the history. This is not limited to 1990s only. This is like, it's a universal factor. So she, like Shafak, brings universal themes through her story. So this is one of the best books that you can read during these days, right? So it starts, like I said, it starts in October, November of this particular year, 1990. So this is ideal time for you to read so that you will feel it better, right? So I'll see you with another book. Probably the next one would be a simpler one, most probably, right? See you then. Have a good weekend. Bye.